I'm Ellen Tonello, and I'm chair trustee to the Medford Public Library. Barbara Kerr had to step out unexpectedly this afternoon, so I'm here to welcome you all and wish that you enjoy this evening. And from there, I will pass the mic to Terri. Thank you.
Good evening, friends and neighbors. My name is Terri Carter, and for at least a few more days, I am the inaugural Poet Laureate of the city of Medford. But even as a poet, I cannot easily describe my joy or good fortune at finding myself in this room tonight. My home neighborhood, West Medford, has been the source of many firsts in this city. First Black postmaster, Black firefighters, Black police officer, Black business owners, and the list goes on. Tonight, the Charlotte and William Bloomberg Medford Public Library is highlighting another wonderful first from this city's original, historical, and traditional African-American community. On behalf of Library Director Barbara Kerr, Trustee Ellen Tonello, friends of the Medford Public Library, and Marjorie Kiven of Bloomberg Philanthropies, I have the great honor of hosting a conversation with this luminous lady. Bear with me, some presents take longer to unwrap than others. Terri Lyne Carrington is a highly accomplished jazz drummer, composer, producer, and educator. She has played with Dizzy Gillespie, Stan Getz, Clark Terry, Herbie Hancock, Wayne Shorter, Joe Sample, Al Jarreau, Yellow Jackets, and many, many others. She toured extensively with Herbie between 1997 and 2007. In 2007, she was appointed professor at her alma mater, Berklee College of Music, where she received an honorary doctorate in 2003. She has won several Grammy Awards, both as a performer and a producer, including a 2013 award for Best Jazz Instrumental Album, which established her as the first female musician to win a Grammy in this category. Terri Lyne serves as a founder and artistic director of the Berklee Institute of Jazz and Gender Justice and the Carr Center in Detroit, Michigan. She also serves on the board of trustees for the Recording Academy, the board of directors for the International Society for Jazz Arrangers and Composers, and the advisory board for the History Makers and New Music USA. Terri was born in Medford on August 4th, 1965, nobody do any math, into a musical family. Her mother played piano as a hobby, and her father was a saxophonist and the president of the Boston Jazz Society. We'll talk a little bit more about that. At the age of 7, Carrington was given a set of drums that belonged to her grandfather, Matt Carrington, who played with Fats Waller and Chuck Berry.
Yep, Chewberry.
Chewberry.
Yeah.
Chewberry.
Yeah, different person. Yeah.
Excuse me.
That's okay. It happens all the time.
Okay. She studied privately, for 3 years, and gave her first major performance at the Wichita Jazz Festival with Clark Terry. At the age of 11, she received a full scholarship to Berklee College of Music. At Berklee College of Music, she played with a virtual who's who of contemporary jazz and studied under legendary drum instructor Alan Dawson, West Medfordite, by the way of Lexington, Mass. In 1983, encouraged by a mentor, the jazz luminary Jack DeJohnette, Carrington moved to New York, where she continued to work with jazz greats and saw her star begin to rise. In the late 1980s, she moved to Los Angeles, where she was the house drummer for the Arsenio Hall show and later the drummer for Quincy Jones's late-night TV show Vibe, hosted by the actor-comedian Sinbad. Her credits as a band leader, a percussionist, and a recording artist are really too numerous to name. But in 1988, she started concentrating her efforts on writing and producing her own works, resulting in Real Life Story, her 1989 Grammy-nominated debut album with Gerald Albright, Diane Reeves, Patrice Rushen, John Schofield, and the late greats Wayne Shorter and Grover Washington Jr. That album was followed by Jazz is a Spirit, a 2002 European release with Terrence Blanchard and Herbie Hancock, and more well-received releases followed in 2004 and 2009, including a sequel to Real Life Story that featured a special appearance by her father, saxophonist Sonny Carrington. In 2011, the Mosaic Project, her fifth album, won the 2011 Grammy Award for Best Jazz Vocal Album. Carrington's 2013 album, Money Jungle, Provocative in Blue, reprised songs by Ellington, Mingus, and drummer Max Roach's 1962 album, Money Jungle. This landmark release won the 2013 Grammy Award for Best Jazz Instrumental Album. She is the first female musician to win a Grammy in this category. And there's so much more to talk about. Carrington's interdisciplinary work includes collaborations with visual artists, choreographers, storytellers, social activists, and yes, poets. In October 2020, the National Endowment for the Arts announced Terri Lyne as one of 4 recipients of the NEA Jazz Masters Fellowships, celebrated in an online show in April of 2021. Awarded in recognition of lifetime achievement, the honor is bestowed on individuals who have made a significant contribution to the art form. September 2022 saw the publication of Carrington's first book, New Standards 101, Lead Sheets by Women Composers, and her album New Standards Volume 1, an ambitious new endeavor created to uplift the voices of women composers. The 2022 album of 11 selections from the songbook features an all-star band plus a dozen special guests. Carrington has also released a children's book, 3 of a Kind, the Allen Carrington Spalding Trio, a nonfiction illustrated poem about 3 women, Jerry Allen, Esperanza Spalding, and yourself, who became musical companions through their love of jazz. For me, this is the simple poetry of it. Just past the time when she could walk, she'd made a snare and cymbal talk. Fusing jazz and rhythm and rock, the queen has moved beyond the block. Her exploits span the cosmic globe. She has the belt and wears the robe. Dropping knowledge on each earlobe, her special style provoked this probe. So raise a glass to Terri Lyne. She's given jazz a whole new spin. Great new standards, vinyl's back in. Pick any album, you're sure to win. Ladies and gentlemen, a true legend of the contemporary jazz idiom, a doorbuster, a change agent, and a barrier breaker in the global music universe, allow me to present Medford's own, the remarkable Terri Lyne Carrington.
Thank you. Wow, I'm tired just listening.
I told you, some packages take a little bit longer to unwrap, especially the good ones.
So then, congratulations to you as well, for being the Poet Laureate of Medford. And we're also proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that a lot. So welcome back to Medford Public Library. The last time we were both here, the Bloomberg family was dedicating this wonderful space, and you and I were part of the entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk a little bit about your early life in the West Medford neighborhood?
Well, I would say growing up in West Medford was unique in a sense, though I didn't really experience other cities other than what our surrounding cities, Cambridge, wherever we went. But I did travel some as a kid, and I felt, Medford for me was perfect because we had this incredible community within a community. Yeah. We had neighbors that felt like family.
Yes.
And a lot of that has changed. I mean, the times have changed.
Yeah.
But every place I went after living and growing up in West Medford, didn't have that same, feeling. Right now I live in Woburn, and I don't know the names of the people that live across the street from me. We wave, but I don't feel that sense of, and I'm gone so much too, but I just don't feel the same sense of community, and it really makes me appreciative of growing up in West Medford. And you could, if you needed anything, there was people always a stone's throw away, and people just down the street and around the corner that were supportive in some way. It was truly the sense of community, the way that we like to use that word. We throw that word around, but it was really truly a community, a very rich community. It's changed. I'm not saying that it's not, but everything has changed. So we have to just deal with that.
That's right. That's right. So I remember your cousin Jimmy Williams. Every once in a while he'd say, I got to go down and look after my cousin. So you want to come down with me? And you lived right next door to Howard Wheaton, the Wheaton family, and they were friends of mine. And then you lived across the street from Andy Dawson. And Andy was a good friend of mine. He was a classmate of mine. So, I don't expect you to remember it, but my memory suggests that Jimmy and I may have babysat you.
That is entirely possible.
Okay.
So wait, so you were in Jimmy's class?
Yeah. He and I both graduated from Medford High in 75.
Okay.
And he lived right down the street from me on Monument Street, and we became fast friends. Okay. And we're still friends. Yeah, we're still good friends.
Okay. I don't know why I thought you were a little bit younger than that.
No, I'm an old dog.
I thought you were closer to my cousin Walter's age, but you sound like you're closer to Eddie, his brother Eddie Washington.
Yeah, Ed Wash was in my class.
Okay,
as a matter of fact, yeah.
Right. I had you in the wrong.
The late great, yeah.
Yes.
So what made you first decide to play the drums and get into jazz music? I mean, I think I know, but entertain the people.
It was there.
Yeah.
That's what I always say. When you expose young people to things,
that's right.
Then there's options. And I don't think my parents tried to expose me. Where's David? There you are. Can we get rid of that hiss? That's just a little, okay. I don't think that my parents tried to expose me. It was just natural because my father was such a jazz head.
Yeah.
And so people were coming over, famous jazz musicians would be coming over because he really literally knew everybody in jazz. Yeah. So they would come through Boston, and it's, his father knew everybody, in that generation.
Yes.
And so his father was a pickup drummer for Sammy Davis Jr., Duke Ellington, Fats Waller, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And so it ran in the family.
Yeah.
And my father actually was hoping for a son to carry on the musical tradition in the family. And
he got
I heard that he wrote something kind of, on the birth certificate when it's after girl. But he was quite pleased when I started playing music.
Yeah.
And in the time, and when you start that young, you don't realize that there are barriers.
Yeah.
You don't realize that about gender. You don't realize it about race. You don't, think about barriers. You just, and if you have enough support and you grow up in a place that's supportive, like Medford and West Medford specifically, then you don't necessarily see and feel those barriers. And that combined with just kind of like a natural sense of self, I guess.
Yeah.
That combined with that was a great combination for me.
Yeah.
Like, going back, so if I think of my mother's family who grew up here, my father's family's from Lynn.
Yeah.
But my mother's family's from Medford. And you were talking about, first, my uncle, which is my mother's uncle, so my great uncle, James Sherwood, was the first Black teacher, school teacher.
That's right.
in
Jim and
Medford.
Absolutely.
And I know the library had kind of a tribute to them, you know, to our family somehow. I forget what it was. I don't know, maybe it still exists, but I saw it in, you know, in the old library. And I think it was moved to West Medford.
It's at the community center, the West Medford Afro-American Remembrance Project.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, they figured prominently in the display.
Yeah.
They were Fiskites. They went to Fisk where I went.
Oh, you went to Fisk?
Yeah, I went to
Okay.
Fisk.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I grew up with that kind of family connection, and everybody's doors were open, and I was over on Aunt and Uncle Jim's house and my grandfather's house. They lived in the same house, you know, 2 different apartments in the same house. And I was over there all the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, took trips with them to Martha's Vineyard and spent a lot of time down there with the Sherwood side of my family. So I was closer in some ways, a lot of ways, to the Sherwood side than my father's side, the Carrington side. But yeah, there were, you know, definitely values that were instilled from them to help shape me. And then you grow and you evolve and you move out of the community and you develop your own sense of values. And, you know, I'm still doing that, but it's such a solid foundation that I have had to work with, that I'm very grateful, you know, for that. And I'm still learning and growing because there's just so much life out there, you know, so many things. I feel like I wasted a lot of time. So when I moved back here and started teaching, I think that changed some things for me. And I decided to live more mission oriented, more purpose driven, and think about what contributions I'm making to humanity and my various communities.
Yeah. So many. So you clearly had early role models and you had mentors. Who were a few of the people that really kind of impacted you in that regard?
Well, you mentioned one, Jack DeJohnette. He's one of my biggest mentors as a drummer. Wayne Shorter was definitely one of my biggest musical and spiritual mentors.
God rest his gentle soul.
Yeah. And people like Bernice Johnson Regan, who's the founder of Sweet Honey and the Rock.
Right.
She was, you know, a mentor when I was 18 and you know, just on that journey of understanding life outside of what I grew up with in West Medford. Yeah. Because, you know, growing up in West Medford was kind of a privilege in comparison to some other people's experiences growing up Black in America.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, of course, I didn't realize that, you know.
No hindsight.
And then you travel.
And you find out some things.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you talk to other people and you hear their experiences. So that was important, you know, to understand, you know, a bigger world and a bigger African-American experience. And to appreciate the privilege of the one that, you know, not that it was perfect by any far stretch of imagination here, but definitely different than, you know, some, you know, people that grew up in more challenging circumstances.
Sure.
Anyway, I'm trying to get back to your question.
Well, I think you definitely have answered it. Some of your early role models.
Yeah, role models. Yeah. So then I made friends with Angela Davis when I was 23, I think it was. I was playing on the Arsenio Hall show, and she was a guest. And you know, I call her my godchild, but Angela Kavanaugh. Vonda Lee Kavanaugh Chet's daughter. She was named after Angela Davis, and you know, everybody, you know, knew Angela, even if they didn't know her story, they knew her. And they knew her name, they knew the afro. So I was just so taken with sitting next to her in makeup at the Arsenio Hall show. And we started talking, and I was, about to introduce myself. And she said, "Oh, I have you on Mulgrew Miller's record, and I have you on Cassandra Wilson's record." Like, I'd only been on a couple of records at that point, and she had them. So I was like, okay, she's a real jazz fan.
Yeah.
And so we had a great conversation, and I said, well, next time I'm playing in the Bay Area, I'll look you up. And she said, okay. And then she left. And I realized, well, how am I going to look her up? Because this was before cell phones, before
Social
the
media,
internet,
right?
emails. So she was like, well, you said it, I guess figure it out.
Yeah.
And then a few months later, I went to the Bay Area to play with Stan Getz, and ran into her in a restaurant.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of fate, right? So I said, well, would you like to come to the show? And she said, no. And I was like, oh, well, no. And she said, I think she was more into a bit more progressive jazz.
Okay.
And she said, no. She said, but you want to come over for lunch tomorrow? So I said, great. And then we became, very close friends. So then, of course, I did my studying and read her book and started understanding another kind of struggle and social justice work.
Absolutely.
And I always tease her because I didn't really start getting more involved with social justice work until, I don't know, the last 10 years, if that. About 10 years. Yeah. And so I was like, how could you even be friends with me? Like, all this time, why did you let me, be so, what's the word? I mean, just kind of be the creative type. Some people believe in art for art's sake. Yeah. And other people believe in art for social consciousness.
Absolutely.
And she said, no, you were always doing it. It just wasn't obvious. It wasn't, out front. It wasn't. Right. And now it all just comes together. Yeah. So, I started making records that made statements, opposed to just because I like it. Yeah. Because I figured, actually a friend said, well, when you ask a doctor, speaking of doctors, my pediatrician is here. Dr. Levine.
Wonderful. How wonderful.
But so when you ask a doctor why they do what they do, what's the answer? And in most cases, they'll say, well, to save lives, and that's somewhere in there at least, right? Yes. And as much as, as seriously as we take, our creative art forms and practices, we have to start thinking about it that way.
You want your life to count for something, obviously.
Yeah, and you want to save lives. Yeah. And creativity saves lives.
Absolutely. It absolutely does. I agree. I believe that with all my heart. So now you've been doing the musical piece of it, the playing and the performing, the producing, for several decades now. So in that regard, what continues to delight you or engage you the most?
Delight and engage. Well, music is just part of me. So I'm delighted whenever I'm partaking in that, whichever way it is. I'm not more attached to playing. In fact, I kind of have a joke with myself and with others that I don't love the drums. Okay. That happens to be a vehicle to be expressive. But I hear and see a lot of people that feel to me like they really love playing the drums. Yeah. That's what they can practice 10 hours a day. I would lose my mind. I've never practiced 10 hours a day. I've probably never practiced more than a couple hours at a time. And I actually stopped practicing when I was 18. I'd be a hell of a drummer if I had kept practicing. But, music was always more important to me than the instrument. Okay. And the instrument always felt limiting. Okay. So, I'm happy when I'm playing, but I'm also happy when I'm in the studio creating a track or producing a record. I'm happy when I'm teaching.
Yeah.
Because you have this one-on-one connection, and you can see somebody's eyes light up, and you can see them improve, and you can see, you inspire. You can feel that you're inspiring them, and then also they're inspiring you. So it's this really beautiful exchange.
Yeah.
And I'm happy making deals.
Yeah.
Like I realize I like that part of it. Not a deal for the sake of a deal, but like realizing how much creativity goes into the business end of things. And because it's all creative, it's creating something, proposing something, making something happen, and really creating value with whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah. And making space for things.
Yeah, making space for others.
Yeah.
That becomes really important because, there's a lot of young musicians doing a lot of pyrotechnics on the instrument. I'm like, ooh. Even my dad, who's, I would say, been my biggest supporter. Yeah. He said, good thing you came along when you did. Because he's young.
Be tough to break into the market.
He's like, right now, I don't know if you how well you do. If you were coming along now, I was like, well, thanks for that vote of confidence. But if I were to come along now, it would be different because I would have had YouTube. I would have had the internet. I would have had all these things. So everything I did was without all that. You know what I mean? It's a different time. But anyway, I think, for me, it's really waking up every day and seizing the day and feeling. There's always so much to do. I consult. I do A&R. I consult for the Errol Garner estate, for anybody that knows who Errol Garner is.
Wow. Play Misty for me.
Yeah. And I consulted for the history makers, part of the Library of Congress. Who else? I'm missing a couple other people. But I'm also A&R for a record company, Candid Records.
Okay.
A&R means artists and repertoire, signing people, bringing artists to the label, being responsible for them turning in, whoever the label signs, turning in a record, a product that is acceptable.
It's a lot.
Yeah, so it's like I feel like I have 10 jobs. Of course, there's teaching, which is and not just teaching. I don't teach that much anymore. Actually, I run the institute. And we have a lot of events and things outside of the classroom. I'd say at least 50% of what we do, and I have it under anything outside of Berklee. I feel it's under what I call the Jazz Without Patriarchy project.
Okay.
And I'll do a plug. We are doing I'm doing an exhibit at Arts Emerson. We're collaborating with Arts Emerson. It's at the Emerson College Media Arts Gallery downtown on Avery Street, and it will run from July 12th to August 4th, ending on my birthday. So it's my first time doing something like that in Boston. I did it in Detroit last year, but it's called New Standards, and it's based on celebrating women composers, women artists, and shifting the narrative and transforming the culture of jazz. So we have 3 films in there, and a lot of artwork by many people that I've curated, and I'm very excited about that. So anybody that's interested in those types of things, it's free, 12 to 6. Wednesdays through Saturdays.
Well, there's a lot of delight and engagement in that.
Absolutely.
In everything that you're doing. So what is it like finding fame, quote unquote, at a fairly early age?
Oh, I never really looked at it as fame. Okay. But what, joke, around with jazz musicians is you're jazz famous.
Okay.
That's very different than famous.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, jazz famous is different. But, I did do late night television, and, that during that time, especially during the Arsenio Hall show, which was the first Black late
That's
night
right.
TV show.
Mm-hmm.
I could walk down the street and get recognized.
Yeah,
So that was
imagine so.
different.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But and even that was within certain, places and certain people. So yeah, I don't really look at myself as being famous.
Okay.
But I do look at myself as a leading member of our jazz community.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. I like that. How do you think life in New York City shaped you?
I only lived there for 5 years.
Okay.
And it was a rough 5 years.
Yeah,
It was like, meaning not rough for me necessarily, but those times in the 80s, there was, lots of challenges, things that you saw, and, just, I think I had a guardian angel probably because I was from West Medford. I wasn't quite New York ready, I don't think.
Yeah.
I mean, I was smart enough, but I would do things, I would, because here we didn't lock doors and all of that.
Well, my daughter's in Brooklyn, so I know what you speak.
Yeah. But imagine that, like, in the 80s, which was rough. Lots of crack houses.
Yeah.
Somebody was being, like, arrested in my apartment building. I'm watching on the news, and I see, like, cameras in front of the building I lived in. Oh, man. Lots of drug dealers. Yeah. Murders down the street.
I better make you stop now.
Yeah. Stop reminiscing?
Yeah, I'll be freaking out. Yeah.
No.
It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah,
it's tough. So when you shifted to LA, you went out to LA, how did things change? Where it was?
Well, I always said that actually. I moved to Glendale, California, and I always said just something about living in California. I don't know if they really call them the suburbs because I'm not even sure at that time what the city was because LA is such a weird thing. It's not like, I mean, now there is a downtown that you can kind of focus on, but before, like, downtown was nothing back then. So, nobody went to downtown. They're building it up, but, they have built it up. But anyway, so I felt living in these suburbs, so to say, these cities outside of LA, felt more like how I grew up than New York
that makes sense.
did. So I was very comfortable once I moved to LA. I could have, moved other places in LA that might not have been so comfortable, but I chose Glendale. I chose Glendale and Lakeview Terrace. Those were the two cities that I lived in.
Okay. So the American musical landscape constantly shifting, it never stays the same. What's your current vision for where you want to go as an artist, an activist, and a musical educator? Any one of the three or all of the above?
Current vision? Oh, I'm not sure. You just keep plugging away at things. My vision is jazz without patriarchy. My problem is my visions are very big. And so I just keep plugging away and doing things that contribute to it. And then one day you wake up and, oh yeah, I did that. I mean, just like you start reading, a bio, and I'm like, oh yeah, I did that. Oh, that's right. There's that. And it all just
that's not the half of it, Terri.
Oh, I know. I know. And people ask me, I can't rattle off all the things, that have happened to me. So it's, obviously been a very charmed and very good life thus far. And success is relative. I'm not the richest person in the world. And there are probably male jazz musicians that aren't as jazz famous as me that are richer, so to say. But, I feel like, I love what I do, and I feel like I've touched a lot of lives. I've been teaching at Berklee for 17 years. And the decisions that I make and decisions, like somebody said once, no is a complete sentence. And I've tried to embody that because I do a lot. And it's very easy to overextend.
Absolutely.
And I've, definitely done my share of that. But at some point, I decided that I'm only going to do things that are valuable to me, and I'm not really necessarily working for money.
Yeah.
And as soon as I started being even more purpose-driven, I started making more money.
Opportunities just come. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's something I also pass along to students.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as far as vision and goals, I kind of go back to your sentence. For the future, I'm optimistic that gender equity will. I'm not sure it's a place we'll arrive necessarily, but I feel like because it won't arrive in all of these fields, subgroups until it arrives
universally, globally.
Socially.
Understood.
But it can be a lot better.
Yeah.
Especially in jazz, because there's no HR. There's no, at least at schools and places, some people have smart enough boards that will demand that they have equity, especially now in the last couple of years after 2020, and between Me Too and Time's Up and Black Lives Matter, people are starting to think differently. But there are people that there's checks and balances with that. But in jazz, there are no checks and balances. There's kind
of a free for all.
Yeah, there's not even really a union.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a musicians union, but it doesn't affect us. You know what I mean? So there's nobody, so you have to have these various groups, and there are different groups, not just our institute, that advocate for this kind of gender equity. And, some things have happened even recently, to me that makes me see if this is happening to me.
Right.
What is happening to these young women that are just coming out of college or trying to get in college?
Yeah.
So that's what drives me to keep this kind of work going. And because it's like, if I can affect it in this microcosm of jazz, I see it, because often people say, well, why just jazz? I'm like, well, that's, the community I'm most affiliated with. And if I can affect it there, I can see how that will affect other places. And jazz is not, and part of my other goal, I would say, with that is to have people look at jazz differently. It's not just something old, something that should be in a museum, something that people's grandparents listen to.
Yeah.
It's very alive and very vibrant.
Absolutely.
And, enjoying a kind of renaissance in a sense, because independent artists have, once you got these major labels, like once streaming and all that started happening, independent artists were able to compete. And they didn't normally, not necessarily like have the same funding for marketing and all that, but the music is there. So people that are looking can find it. And so it makes it so, it opened things up so that people that were listening to rock or rap or R&B or hip hop or whatever, they can combine that music,
a lot of that,
with jazz. And it really, made it quite fertile.
Absolutely. I was trying to think of the young brother's name, and he's passed away several years ago. Keith Elam, Guru.
Oh, Guru.
Yeah. How the second career beyond rap was his blending of jazz and contemporary hip hop, and how much I've enjoyed that. So, what musicians would you have loved to play with that you didn't get a chance to?
Well, that's, you mean people that have passed?
Yeah.
Because I still have a chance.
Well, Well, I'll get to that in a second, okay? You ain't going nowhere. Understood.
No, I don't know. I don't really think like that. I don't really.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I always kind of say that I'm a rock and roller at heart, and I would love to play with, but this is more present anyway still, because they're still alive and kicking, at least some of them. I used to say I would love to play with the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I kind of like that kind of.
I can see you,
Yeah.
you know, being
I
a bit of
mean,
a
Hendrix.
rebel
If
and
we
doing
wanted to
that.
pick
Well,
somebody, I would
now,
say Jimi
okay.
Hendrix. That would be the one
Yeah.
person I would
All right.
love to
See, that's good. That's
play
good.
with.
Okay.
More than like, you know, Miles Davis or
Yeah.
somebody like that.
Okay. Who's out there today that you want to work with, that you think you'd like to work with, besides all of the wonderful people that you've been working with?
I don't know. I just kind of let the universe guide me, and I go with the flow. I believe in that you need to be in rhythm with the universe, and I trust that. So I don't make. There's no real bucket list for me with people.
Okay.
My bucket list would have to do with just things I may want to accomplish, but not with people.
Yeah. It's a great way to look at it. Okay. So I you know.
But if I were to actually think about that longer, I would say.
Tell me.
I would say my peers were never as. They didn't call me.
Okay.
So most of my experiences and accomplishments came because I made them happen. You know, because I had to create opportunities for myself.
Yeah.
And so that's something that, you know, women have to deal with more in this music, you know, in this field.
That's right.
And so I see how I sometimes get excited a little bit if a peer calls me for something. And I'm thinking, but I wouldn't do this normally, and it's definitely not paying me enough. So, like, why am I doing this? But it's because they never called me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was always a generation beyond. Like, you know, there's always people that were generation before or 2 generations before.
Yeah.
So there's that kind of wanting to be accepted. And then you realize, oh, well, now I'm, you know, they need to.
In a position to.
Exactly. They need to, you know,
come
associate with me more than I need to associate with them, with some of them.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because I feel like I would have grown differently musically if I had that high level of support from people of my own generation.
Yeah. I see a couple artists out there, and I always say, well, Terri Lyne should play with her. You know. Well, she should play with Terri Lyne. I should say.
Tell me who. I'll look them up.
I like Cecile McLaurin Savant.
Oh yeah, we've worked together.
You worked together with her.
I text with her every
Samara Joyce
week or 2. Yeah,
nice
she's
stuff.
on my new record.
See how that works. See, okay, all right. See, learn something new every day. You're. I consider you a you know, kind of a stateswoman now. You know, in the jazz world. You know, kind of an ambassador. You know, a stately figure in the jazz world. If you considered yourself in the same way, you know, kind of, what are you embracing as a stateswoman? What are you embracing?
That just means that we've gotten older and
come
to a place of wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm a kid at heart, and I try to. That's the biggest thing I learned from Wayne Shorter. Even though people don't see me like that, most people tell me that they see me as being extremely serious. I always crack jokes. I think humor is extremely important. I just think we keep developing wisdom. And you know, you share that wisdom. And that's what I think a stateswoman, statesperson does. You know, it's like somebody who is recognized for having a certain amount of experience and wisdom, and to share it. You know, because there's people that have had a lot of experiences you don't necessarily want in jazz.
Right.
I'm thinking, you know, you don't necessarily want your kids hanging out with them. I mean, you know what I mean? There's a lot of experiences we don't want to pass along. So it's figuring out, how to still what's the word I'm looking for? Be, you know, to make your experiences, make somebody else's life a little bit easier, you know, from your experiences. And because there's a lot of, I don't want to say crabs in the barrel type of, you know, syndrome, but it's set up in a way, it's been set up in a way where everybody's fighting for the same things.
That's right. That's
right. Everybody's fighting for the same gigs. I remember when I was a kid, a gentleman told me, you can only do one gig at a time. And that really opened my thinking.
Yeah.
Because there's no best. Like I say all the time, you know, I was just voted for the first time. I have to admit it felt good, but I was just voted. Oh, it doesn't come out. Wait, what are we in? It doesn't come out till July.
Okay.
So I'm not supposed to say.
Okay. All right. I want to get you in any
July
trouble. So.
14th, but there's a magazine that I finally, after all of these years, it's like the #1 jazz magazine. I'm not saying the name of the magazine, but after all these years, I was voted, you know, the #1 drummer.
Yeah. Well,
and I think that's hilarious because I'm not even playing as good as I used to play. You know, and when I looked at everybody's names after mine, it's embarrassing. Wow. You know, because there's a lot of drums happening after my name, you know, and but then I realized that, you know, it's kind of like what you're saying, this statesperson,
That's right,
thing, and it's kind of like, you know, a legacy that you create that finally, you know, some point is acknowledged, and it's been acknowledged many ways, of course.
Yeah.
But I remember being young, going to Jack DeJohnette's house and seeing the plaque.
Yeah.
You know, the critics poll plaque.
Yeah.
And, you know, feeling like, I'd love to see, you know, get one of those.
Yeah, he's a bad boy too. Jack DeJohnette. Yeah.
And then, you know, I coming to an acknowledgement, because even 2021, I think it was, or no, it was 2020. Yeah, because it was during the pandemic. I was on the cover of this magazine.
Yes.
For winning Jazz Group of the Year, Jazz Artist of the Year, and Jazz Album of the Year. So it was a bit of a sweep.
Yeah.
So they put me on the cover. But the thing that was missing, you know, not missing, but that wasn't there, was Jazz Drummer of the Year. Yeah. So I thought, well, that's never going to happen because it's kind of proven that everybody sees me as this kind of entity. This is a lot bigger than just playing drums, which is fine, which is how I've designed my life and career. But then there's that little part of you that just has that little...
I'm a drummer too.
Yeah.
I do play the drums.
Don't forget.
Fantastic.
So I'll finally have that plaque.
I love it. And it'll be well-deserved, you know, Lifetime Achievement Award, definitely.
Well,
yeah.
Not quite there yet.
Not, okay, all right.
I do have one of those, but
I want to get you out of here, you know, too soon. Once you stay around for as long as possible.
Yeah.
When you think of, and I do this a lot when I'm, you know, doing these interviews, which I do at the community center, you know, quite a bit.
And thank you. I just want to say before I forget, thank you for doing so much research because it's not easy.
Yeah.
You know, you have to do a lot more work than me here, sitting here.
I do not want to sit here and not, you know, not intelligently, you know, pursue our joint objective. Let me say it like that. But so I want to maybe have you play a little word association with me.
Okay.
You do that? Okay. So when you think of the word authenticity, what comes to mind?
Well, I mean, I've always tried to live an authentic life. And I think, you know, discovering that, you know, you can't just wake up and be authentic. What are you authentic to? What is it relating to? Okay. And you're finding, you know, your way most of the time, but there's something deep inside that tells you what's right, tells you what's wrong, tells you, you know, that you're a beacon. So as long as I keep paying attention to that beacon, then I'm living an authentic life.
I love that. So you have obviously some you live vicariously through a lot of different things. When your dad was president of the Boston Jazz Society, what was going on in that, kind of those Sunday meetings and those, sessions where groups of musicians and some very famous musicians would get together in your living room or Jimmy Williams' living room, Uncle James?
Yeah, I didn't really pay attention so much. I think I was out in the streets.
Okay, all right.
Riding my bike.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
I mean, because people would have those meetings,
Mhm.
and it was always that this is the adults' time. They're the serious adults
business,
talking
right,
about something serious.
Okay.
And not that it was ever like, kids should be seen and not heard or anything like that in my
Got you.
house, but I was always trying to just kind of have fun.
Yeah.
So I was hanging out a lot. So just kind of sitting in a meeting like that, I'm not even sure I was welcome to sit in those meetings. So,
Okay. Yeah.
But I think like you said, vicariously, you pick up things and you understand. So, so I guess the one thing I would say is it reflects how organizing has to happen. So
Absolutely.
maybe I've organized differently,
Okay.
but
Okay.
nothing really happens without group effort.
That's right. That's right.
And organizing.
Fantastic.
Especially important things like movements.
Yes.
There's never any. So that's what I try to point to. And that's something I've also learned from Angela Davis, because she always points that out. And so even when I'm the first woman to win a Grammy in a certain category, that's there's a lot to talk about there, and it's not the fact that I'm the first woman. You know what I mean? It's
everything
like, what
that
does
went
that
into
mean?
getting you there.
No, everything that was wrong before
For you
that.
not getting there. Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
That
Not
makes a
for
lot of
me.
sense.
I got it.
But for the
So
industry.
it's not for me. It's for all the women that nobody knows who they are, that didn't have that opportunity.
That's fair.
It points to systemic problems. So any accomplishment of mine, I'm never going to gloat in it because it really points to systemic problems.
Okay.
Because if I were male, some of my accomplishments would never be celebrated. Some of them.
Okay.
So it gets a little, bittersweet, I guess maybe is the right word, to be celebrated, for being the first woman to do something.
Yeah. Wow.
Because it shouldn't be that way.
No, absolutely. I agree. 100%. 100%. One more, and I'll leave you alone. In this regard, leadership.
You're asking me what I think?
Yeah. What comes to mind?
I think some people are naturally leaders.
Okay.
Some people have to work at it because you see something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
And you can't wait for somebody else to do it. I think I'm a natural kind of combination of both.
Okay.
When I'm certain about something, I think what I noticed in a studio, I was always the one saying, why don't we try this? What about this? Oh, what do you think about that? And trying to say it in a way that would make whoever's the leader was consider what I was saying.
Okay.
And then I started realizing, that's kind of leadership. And, we can also be leaders in supporting other people. And, not to beat a dead horse, but traditionally women have done that over the years, right? Not necessarily getting credit for leadership, but being the support that's the backbone of someone else, that's being a leader. So it's funny because I think people sometimes look at me and like, oh, you're doing these amazing things. Oh, and I feel like I'm still being discovered, which hasn't hurt me, but it gets old because I'm
Yeah.
like, I was always
Right.
this.
You
know?
yeah.
You know, so it's constantly feeling like people are catching up to you,
Yeah.
which I take that, gracefully. I try to, because as I said, it doesn't hurt me. It keeps me going in a sense. It keeps more opportunities coming because, I'm starting to feel like maybe in the jazz community, they're like, oh no, her again. I don't want that to happen, which is one reason why I start to say no to some things.
Yeah.
Because I don't want that to happen. But so it's a double-edged sword, so to say. Feeling like you didn't see it until 2022 or 3.
Right.
But I felt this way for the last 20 years. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
So, yeah, it's kind of... So as far as leadership goes, I just, do what I do. And if somebody... if you see it, as I said, if you see a need, if you see a need for something and somebody has to step in, you do it and you decide if it's worth it to you. If it's, at this point, I'm 57. Yep, 58 in a couple months. Yeah. So at this point, I'm only going to do those things. Well, I'm trying to only do those things if it really feels
right.
Right, and
meaningful.
It feels like it's a genuine that it's a genuine good use of my time.
Okay.
So I think leadership is all about delegating as well.
Oh, nice.
You don't have to do everything.
It's great to be able to. That's for sure. So I want to leave a little bit of time, anyways, because I know you're on the clock. For the audience, in case there are some questions out there. So give the mic to Ellen. Okay. She'll, if you want to raise your hand, if you have a question.
Sure.
Okay.
Let me come over here.
Hi, Terry. My name is Mabry Andrews. Terry, I wanted to ask you 2 questions. First one is about your latest album. I want to know how you came up with titles for my 2 favorite songs on that album are Respect the Destroyer and Ima. Is that how you pronounce it?
I believe so. Those are not my titles.
So okay.
I think that's I'm like Ima. I'm pretty sure it's Ima.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody in the audience can help us with that. His grandmother, I think.
Yeah, mother. I think it's the
in Hebrew
name for mom,
Ima, right?
mother, right?
Yeah, mother.
Okay.
See, I had grandmother.
Okay. All right.
Those are my titles. Respect the Destroyer is Brandy Younger's title. And Ima is Anat Cohen's title. So my new album is 11 songs from a book that's 101 compositions by women composers.
Right.
So I have 1 song in that book, but then there's 100 other women.
Yes. Okay.
And I didn't record the 1 song of mine because it's actually been recorded on an early album, Jazz is a Spirit. So I didn't re-record that. So none of the songs are mine, other than I wrote a lyric to Carla Bley, her song. She has a song called Lawns, and I wrote. It was one of my greatest pleasures, and also very daunting to write a lyric to such a beautiful song by such an amazing composer. So that's the one Samara Joy sings.
Okay.
On the record, and I changed the title to 2 Hearts, based on the lyric. But yeah, I'll tell you an interesting story though. Respect the Destroyer is, and if you come to this exhibit, we have a film about New Standards, and Brandy Younger is explaining that title in the film, and she says that she couldn't think of a title, so she put her brother's name in something that's called a Wu-Tang, I guess from the Wu-Tang
Clan.
Wu-Tang Clan, yes.
Rap Wu-Tang name generator. And she put her brother's name in, and then it popped back. You will now be known as Respect the Destroyer. So I went and put my name in, and nothing came up quite as cool.
Very good.
Okay. Second question. As you know, your dad brought me into his orbit, walked by my house one day, heard me playing jazz, and understood that I
You
knew
couldn't get rid
something
of him
about
after
jazz,
that,
and I
right?
love jazz. So, but he prevailed upon me. He was like, you got to get Sirius XM about 3 years ago. It's a subscription radio service. And you have a show on there.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard it one Friday night. And your show is?
Future Flavors.
Right. Bringing music of new artists. You're big on that, getting new or unknown, little known artists out there. Mm-hmm. And that's why he wanted me to get Sirius XM years ago. He said, hey, all the cats that are coming up now, you don't know them. You know all the old ones, but that's the only place to find them. All the stations are going, and Eric in the evening, he's passed, but his station, his time got cut back. Anyway, I heard you on a Friday night at 6:00, your first show. Mm. And then I didn't hear from you for a while. And then I heard a show, either it was a live show or replay on a Saturday morning. Could you straighten me out on when you are on now?
Yes. It's every Friday at 6, like you said. And it's repeated Sundays at 5. This is Real Jazz on Sirius XM radio. And Real Jazz is more of a traditional jazz station. Mm-hmm. They're mandated to play that, but when they have these, for lack of a better term, I don't know what you call them, artist shows or
like features.
Well, when an artist or somebody hosts a show, like for instance, we're not getting paid, like we just host these shows. But so we don't actually have to deal with the program directors, like what they say to play. So there's a word for, I can't think of the right word, what to call it. But anyway, so I can play what I want. So the idea, so they have like Marcus Miller has a show. I have this one, and Joey DeFrancesco had a show. And then also the program director, Mark Ruffin, has a Friday Fusion show. So these shows are designed to try to bring a newer audience and to push the music forward. So you have this hour a week to be contemporary, or a couple of hours, depending on whose show it is. Whereas most of the station is traditional jazz. So it's kind of trying, and Sirius XM has, I don't know, over 100, probably close to 200 stations. Yeah. And there's only one jazz station. And now we have to, like they really need a station for progressive jazz as well as the station that they have already for traditional jazz. But anyway, so if you want to hear it, it's 6 p.m. on Fridays, 5 p.m. on Sundays. And then it does come on. I don't listen. I've only heard it once or twice myself. I create them. I'm stressing right now because it's Wednesday and I haven't made this Friday show yet. It's only an hour, but it takes time because
absolutely.
I take care with what I play. So I have to do research and I have to figure out how to fill this hour up with music. And then I have to record myself talking about it. So when I bit this off, I didn't realize it was going to take quite as much time. But it comes on again in the middle of the night, Saturday, like 1 or 2 or 3 in the morning. So it's 3 times over the weekend.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, over here.
Somebody's phone.
It's mine.
That was your-
Sorry. Hi. Thank you so much for sharing so much with us. It was delightful to hear you. I have a question because you were talking about choosing and researching. What determining factors go into choosing what you play for the show? Because I haven't heard it yet, so I plan to. But because in a sense, you're gatekeepers right? In like people who
I
present.
like to call it curating.
Curating, thank you. Not you, but there are many people who are gatekeepers in the radio business, and curating is lovely, thank you. So what are the things that go into your choosing whom to present?
Yeah, well, my show is called Future Flavors, so I'm not going to play Miles Davis and John Coltrane. You know, it's really about, and what's interesting is I approached them about doing a show for several years ago, because the first December, so that must have been 2020 of the pandemic, I subbed for 2 weeks for Mark Ruffin. And so I had, I think it was 2 hours or 3 hours a day. And that took up my entire Christmas, the month of December. You know, it was a lot. 2 weeks of 3 hours a day, it was a lot. And so I made every day a theme. So one of the things was, you know, was like Monday, drum day. Tuesdays, you know, Fridays was Future Flavors. One was Wednesday was women composers and artists. Thursdays was maybe Latin music, and there was one other thing. I can't remember, but so I kept pushing on them, wanting to do this women composers, women artists show, and they were very resistant. So I gave up on it. And then one day I was like, ooh, maybe I should be pushing Future Flavors. Because that's, you know, also passionate about young musicians and the music moving forward. So I realized, so when I started talking about Future Flavors, they accepted that idea. And I realized, oh, I can actually do gender equity
Exactly.
with Future Flavors.
Yes.
Exactly.
So they don't have to have a show that says it, but I'm doing it anyway.
Right.
Which just means in my book, trying to, you know, have as much equity as possible with who I play. So every show doesn't quite make 50%, you know, women or non-binary artists, but I shoot for that. And if it's, you know, if it's close enough, it's close enough.
Fantastic.
So yes, but as far as how I choose the music, I listen to other playlists. I listen to Apple playlists, Spotify playlists. I look at magazines. I go on YouTube. You know, one song leads you to another. You just go down these rabbit holes.
Right.
I think of artists. I said, well, what are they doing? What was their last record like? You know.
All right.
Just
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I also had a
Thank
question
you.
about Jarreau, but I'll keep.
Maybe one more?
yeah, he seems like he has a burning question.
My guy back there, Jonathan Fagan. It's piano player for my little trio.
Sorry to make you walk all the way over here. Just curious what advice you would give to a jazz educator who's trying to kind of make female students feel more comfortable and empowered, really, to just kind of pursue their visions, and also in, you know, something that's still somewhat of it can still feel like a boys' club.
Oh, it is, yeah. Definitely feels like that. Advice. Well, I think innately, most people, when it's pointed out to them, most people know what's right and what's not right. Most people know what equity is. It's just we're out of habit sometimes in certain areas, and it takes work. And so it's kind of making people feel comfortable is good, but it's just a lot more that has to go into it if we're truly going to be change agents, you know, and because what does that even mean? Like it's so systemic that, you know, the matriculation rate of young women from middle school to high school playing instruments drops off. Then from high school to college drops off. Then from college to the professional world drops off even more. And these rates are much more than they drop off for young male musicians. So it's giving extra, because any group that's marginalized, it takes work to catch up. You know, you have to do, you know, like for instance, I have a summer program at Berklee. It's called Summer Jazz Workshop, and it auditions people from all over the world. So, of course, it's very competitive and it's mostly male if I'm just choosing the best players. What is that even based on? Because here's a bigger question. Everything that's decided of what sounds good has to come out of male bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we think about that differently? What does good mean? Loud, strong, fast, hard?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So these are the questions we have to consider. A new sound, a different sound that has never really been an sound aesthetic in the music. So once we can do that, which is a difficult one. I mean, I've been playing for 50 years now. And it's difficult to change what I thought sounded good. But the only reason why I've been successful is because I can sound as good as the next guy. Mm-hmm. Right? So I've realized I've had female students and I'm like, no, hit it harder, like not quite like that, but basically though, and I have one student, I always use her as an example. She plays drums, she's from London. And she was good, really good, talented. And she was at Berklee. And it was just something for me that I wanted her to just dig in just a little more. And then she put out a record, and I'm playing it, on this Future Flavors show. I was listening to it, and I was like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the way she plays. And I was just putting my own value on what she was doing, but I had to open up to, there's absolutely nothing wrong. And I'm, and then hope that I didn't discourage her in any way by trying to get her to whatever, be a little stronger or whatever, you know what I mean? So, I mean, that's the kind of training that teachers have to, do. They have to start thinking about the sound differently. And also, if you're trying to do change, like with my summer program, I could easily give these scholarships, because if you get into it, you get a full ride for that summer. And then it also often means you're kind of earmarked for a scholarship to the college. And I could easily, if I was just doing this existing merit system, choose, because there's 16 people, it's 2 ensembles of 8 people each. I could easily choose, 8, young white gentlemen to be in it. And I have to, work at finding alternatives to that, to, look at basically how the people that have excelled also had, summer programs, had better instruments, better teachers, more resources.
Yeah.
So, and it can take work to go find these gems that have gotten lost in the applications, and I've found a few. You don't always win. Sometimes you bet on something that doesn't exactly work, but and more often it does work. And the potential, so you have to work at hearing potential, and often it's worked. And even if the person didn't come to Berklee, they could be at Manhattan School of Music or other places, and they've soared. So I feel good about the summer program and putting some of that extra work in. So to answer your question, that's what I would encourage you and any other teacher to do.
Thank you.
Okay, so I fear our time has pretty much come to a close. I didn't want to let Terri go without giving her the last word, but I think you just gave it. In terms of, kind of the advice that you gave to Jonathan. I think that was very substantial. So I want to once again acknowledge the trustees, and Ellen Tonell is here with us, the Friends of the Library, Library Director Barbara Carr, and Bloomberg Philanthropies for making this evening possible. Beyond this, our heartfelt gratitude and admiration to Terri Lyne Carrington for taking the time to have this amazing conversation with Medford. Buy her albums, read her books, and support her artistry. She is an absolute icon, and in my eyes, a national treasure. We appreciate y'all for coming out. And remember, she'll be back to play here on July 22nd. If you can still register, I suggest that you do. That's our real life story, and we're sticking to it. Have a great evening.
Yeah, thank you, Terry.
Just before we close this evening, I'd just like to say that when you were speaking, Terry, you mentioned being rich monetarily. I wish you would know how rich we have become this evening listening to your conversation here on the stage at the library. So thank you very much. And I also would like to say that in the audience this evening, there is Marjorie Bloomberg Tivens here with us. So if you want to just give us a little wave to let us know you're here. And Marjorie was very instrumental in having this evening. So we thank Marjorie very much.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you in July.
Yes, please
Okay.
come.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you so much. I appreciate